the leader of the City of York, Councillor James Alexander, to give us his address for 2014. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the third of these annual speeches introduced after the local elections and now a fixture in the municipal calendar. And welcome all here tonight. I really value the opportunity to reflect with you on the year that has gone, our current situation and future prospects. As I said last year, my vision is of a successful York with a growing economy and an increasing number of jobs so that real people can take up new opportunities, enter better paid work and increase their life chances. My vision is that of a city of aspiration and of ambition. Cities that do well know their assets and promote them. They don't talk themselves down to the competition. They're proud of striving to be the best, most competitive, most innovative, and do this by taking bold, brave, creative decisions to better their futures. They look to the future whilst valuing what it took to get them there, but don't solely dwell in the past. So we should say enough to those who seem to take pleasure in talking this great city down, in finding the downside of every success, and in harking back to some mythical golden age, if such a thing ever existed. Of course, the present is not and never has been perfect, and the future can often seem challenging and frightening to some. But we need to secure the future based on an honest appreciation of the city's many achievements and its many assets, not least the strong partnerships that exist between the council, the health sector, the police, our great universities and colleges, businesses and the voluntary and community sector, and our even greater people. The great Victorian pioneers in local government, such as Joseph Chamberlain, knew that it is necessary to be bold to create a better future for their citizens. In the current era, local leaders across the political spectrum are again rising to this challenge. People such as Marco Serest in Peterborough, Sir Richard Leese in Manchester, Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, and even Boris Johnson. We have a choice: grow and thrive, so that young people and children who want to stay in the city can find good jobs here, good homes, and have good lives. The alternative isn't the status quo as some want to portray, but decline and destitution mixed with increased risk of tension between the generations. Politicians of all parties need to take notice of the Conservative Cabinet Minister David Willett's warning in his book The Pinch about the future being stolen from the young. I've always welcomed an open dialogue with York residents and businesses, and this has continued since becoming council leader. My mobile number is freely available on the council website, and I share as much as I can on social media, showing what my colleagues and I are doing on residents' behalf. But because I am forthright, clear on what I expect for this great city, and take difficult but necessary long-term decisions, some have accused me of not listening and not being open. However, we have made a number of strides to improve openness in how we operate and take decisions. We now publish all of our travel expenses online. We produce a simple one-page summary of all our consultations on our website, and something I championed in opposition, all council meetings are streamed on the internet and uploaded to YouTube, and this is one such event. With the support of the Technology Strategy Board, we will be working to put as much as possible of our data together with that of partners online in a data mill, where it can be interrogated and analysed by all our citizens. Elected members can then be held further to account for performance in this city. As I promised last year, I have been holding a series of community conversations across the city to meet local residents and businesses to understand their concerns, and engagement with the community is at the heart of our rewiring programme, which we are transforming the services we deliver and the way we deliver them. Even in relation to the most controversial issue of the year, the trial of Lendal Bridge, we listened, and when it became clear that the approach wasn't commanding a consensus, we took decisive action. The issues the closure was designed to address, of course, remain with us, but I've reached out to other parties to try and find a way to tackle the serious issues we face that will enable us to move forward together. And I'm proud of the progress made over the last year. The number of people out of work has fallen to pre-recession levels for job seekers allowance claimants, and the proportion of the population on out-of-work benefits is at the lowest point since 1999. York's job seekers allowance rate has fallen to 1.3%, below that of the regional and national levels of 3.6% and 2.7% respectively. York is outperforming the region and the nation, and our economy is back to pre-recession levels in annual value and in terms of number of job seekers. Youth unemployment, or the job seekers allowance claimants aged 18 to 24, has decreased by 36% in the last year, one of the lowest proportions on record, and have also returned to pre-recession levels. Youth unemployment in York is now at 1.6%, lower than the regional and national proportions of 6.3% and 4.9% respectively. We have invested through our Economic Infrastructure Fund in the recently opened Park and Rides at Poppleton and Askham Bar, which will free up road capacity for those with no alternative but to use their car. When we need to do all we can to tackle congestion and its damaging impact on the local economy, we are taking action. The investment will also have a positive effect on carbon emissions and improve the infrastructure available to connect people to jobs and other opportunities across the city. Rail has also been a strong focus of us. I set up the East Coast Mainline Authority Group and pledged York's support for High Speed 2. Increasingly, we're recognised as a natural northern hub, and despite the disappointing news from central government on the location of the High Speed Rail College, I'm convinced that other opportunities in rail education will materialise, to which discussions have already taken place. We have been recognised by the Financial Times Foreign Direct Investment magazine, with the city coming in two of the top 10 award categories. The overall small European cities and FDI strategy, with the report also commending our economic infrastructure, business friendliness and economic potential. And what I'm particularly proud of, and I felt like I should have sent them a check, was The Economist, who described us as a northern light and said the economic outlook of the city changed when my administration took office, being more open to new business. But leadership isn't just about taking responsibility for those things that go well. If we are to overcome cynicism about politics and politicians, I recognise that we need some honesty about the things that aren't going so well. So it is disappointing to me personally that we haven't made as much progress as I hoped in some areas, and that residents haven't had the services we would like in some cases. Our investment in adult social care, for example, has not yet borne fruit. In part, this is a legacy issue of inadequate funding from central government and an increasingly challenging demographic, but the way in which more locally the way our health infrastructure has been reconfigured has also been particularly unhelpful. But I am now confident that the arrangements we are putting in place are the relationships we have established to implement the Better Care Fund from 2015, which will see outcomes improve and costs contained, and much progress has to be said has been made over the past few months. More generally, as I said when our budget was adopted, the financial settlement from central government leaves us and all local authorities with some huge challenges in terms of savings to be made and statutory services to be provided. Our rewiring transformation programme will enable us to meet these challenges and will bring a different relationship with the city, built through extensive engagement with the communities that we serve. And make no mistake, my colleagues and I are committed to protecting and improving public services. It is much in our DNA as privatisation is to some other politicians, but we need a longer term, more strategic approach to public services, built upon three principles: investing for the future, planning for the future, and a future for all. Despite one of the most challenging financial settlements in modern history from central government, I remain committed to investing in local infrastructure, building on the £28 million Economic Infrastructure Fund in my first budget. Using our position as community leader, we've been taking steps to leverage additional public and private investment. Take the case of digital infrastructure. Having achieved super-connected city status, further work is aiming to make York the most digitally connected city in the country. Sky and TalkTalk recently announced they have joined forces with City Fibre to create a new company that will deliver ultra-fast broadband services in the city of York. The new joint venture company plans to build a state-of-the-art, city-wide, pure fibre-to-the-premises network to deliver broadband speeds of 1 gigabit, direct to tens of thousands of homes and businesses offering customers better quality and value, with the first York customers expected to be connected in 2015. This will be the first time ever that a UK city has been connected with such high speeds on a citywide basis. The parties will work in partnership with the local community to help ensure the network delivers the numerous benefits better broadband can provide, including helping to grow the local economy and supporting York businesses to better compete in the UK and abroad. It will also help to attract new businesses, and we intend to hold a conference showcasing the city's digital infrastructure to bring more companies of the calibre of Hiscox and John Lewis to the city. The city centre, as part of the Super Connected Cities programme, is to receive free Wi-Fi, which will benefit businesses, visitors and citizens. We were committed to delivering this, but I should point out that the funding is funded from central government. As well as providing free Wi-Fi, the concession will provide to retail, hospitality and visitor businesses opportunities that exploit the Wi-Fi system. This will include extending free Wi-Fi into the premises, providing detailed footfall information and location-based advertising. The York Connection Voucher Scheme has been launched to provide small and medium enterprises better quality, high-speed broadband. Funded through government Super Connected Cities and through the council, the vouchers will provide assistance of up to £3,000 per business for those seeking those faster and better broadband to support them growing their businesses. But because York didn't achieve a great deal of support during the times of the Regional Development Agency, when these schemes come forward, some businesses in York are very sceptical. So my message to business is the support is there, so please do use it. Because if it's not used, then we can't argue for greater resources in the future. This demonstrates what modern public leadership is all about, a prudent but non-risk averse approach, using relatively small amounts of local resource to unlock much bigger sums for the private sector and national government to build the digital infrastructure that will secure our economic future. And soon we'll be showcasing York and Yorkshire for that matter to the world through the Tour de France coming through our streets, the biggest annual sporting event in the world, and this will be a spectacular event for all the community. It will give Yorkshire the confidence the Commonwealth Games gave to Manchester. However, we do have some critical issues. As I've said many times before, housing is one such issue for the city. We have one of the fastest growing populations in England, and the cost of housing in York is now 8 times higher than earnings of the average York resident. Our local plan sets a vision of 22,000 new homes in this city, and this has been vigorously portrayed as ripping up the greenbelt, concreting over our heritage and trying to turn the city into the Milton Keynes of the north. For me, this is where the choice I outlined earlier lies: grow and thrive, or decline and fall short. We need an answer to the question that parents often put to me: how will our children ever afford a house here? And it's hard to answer when I cannot afford one myself. Simple economics tell you that we currently have too much demand and too little supply. We need more supply so that young people have a future in the city in which they were raised. The alternative of allowing a situation where prices continue to rise so that they have to move away is not one I'm prepared to accept for my family or for anybody else's. Whatever we think about a growing population, this is not optional. Failing to increase housing supply will not stop people wanting to live in an attractive city and will lead to more subdivision and substandard housing, the type of which we do not want in York. Planning for the future also means planning for deeper partnership arrangements with our neighbours. As I've said before, I see the opportunity to join the West Yorkshire Combined Authority as crucial for the future of this city. Take one simple example of why this is so important, and that is transport. Full membership of the Combined Authority will give York residents access to the Metro scheme, giving much cheaper access to opportunities in Leeds and beyond. It will also mean more people from West Yorkshire will see a day out shopping in York as an attractive option, increasing footfall and supporting York businesses. The Leeds City Region Strategic Economic Plan, recently submitted to government, shows how important West Yorkshire is to the city and also how important we are in return. But I want to be clear that York will retain its own distinctive and special identity with our membership of the Combined Authority. But there is also no sense in becoming isolated when the Combined Authority provides options to us to increase opportunities and improve the lives of our residents. Those residents matter and they vote for us. Those living here in York, and they are important. We need to be on the other side of the door arguing for investment in York, not outside looking in, carping about being hard done by. I'm also pleased that government is now encouraging collaboration between local enterprise partnerships. This means that we are now able to play a full part in the York, North Yorkshire and East Riding Local Enterprise Partnership, as well as being a member of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. York's priorities are recognised in both strategic economic plans, and I would draw attention to BioVale as a nationally significant asset in terms of agri-tech that is recognised in both plans. I'm convinced that our position as a bridge between economic geographies will benefit both, as well as York. It is disappointing, therefore, that the government has not acted decisively on Lord Heseltine's recommendation to amend the legislation to allow us to join the West Yorkshire Combined Authority as a full member. This is unfinished business for the government and for us. In the interests of the economic future of York, West Yorkshire, North Yorkshire and the East Riding, I will continue to campaign for Her Majesty's Government to deliver on promises made to Parliament. Fundamental to my personal political vision is the belief that the benefits of growth need to be enjoyed by all. Addressing poverty is a key priority for me. When Sebum Rowntree wrote his report on poverty in York in 1901, he found that a third of the city was living in poverty. It is simply not right that today 20% of children in our wealthy city are living in poverty. I believe that it is wrong for any child to grow up in poverty. In-work poverty is a particular issue we need to address. I am proud that all council staff are paid at least the living wage, and I'm extremely pleased that I lead the first city in Yorkshire to state its ambition to become a living wage city. And we have a broad coalition, including the private sector, the public sector, and the third sector. We're now working with others to encourage them to follow our leadership and to ensure that everyone in York is paid at least a living wage. And today I call on the University of York to join and become a living wage employer. I often describe myself as a free market collectivist. I believe in competition, I believe in a free market, but I believe in a fair market that is regulated to protect the collective or the people. How can the market be free if wages are effectively subsidised by in-work benefits? A real market solution will see wages at a level where all can survive. This is why I've been campaigning for a commitment in the next Parliament to raise the minimum wage to the living wage. This would give people dignity in work, make work more attractive, and reduce the nation's benefit bill. I'm also proud of the York Financial Assistance Scheme that provides a one support package solution for residents in financial difficulty. Spend last year was £240,000, but more importantly it was helping 1,557 people, 60% of which live in the most deprived wards in this city. These measures were inspired by our Fairness Commission last year, and our International Fairness Conference last week responded to one of its recommendations too. Although not as high profile as the Tour de France, this international gathering in our great city made me equally as proud. But looking at what we have achieved over the last 3 years makes me a passionate advocate of much more devolution from Whitehall to cities. And I'm pleased that all three parties seem to be embracing this agenda. Localism may yet become more than devolution of responsibility without power and resources. I spoke yesterday at a conference of the new local government network, and I gave support to the comments made at the weekend by the Scottish Secretary Alistair Carmichael. He said devolution to England was unfinished business, and there was a debate to be had in England on an English Parliament or regional assemblies. If we want the North to prosper, and we want the good jobs, the good homes, and the good lives I referred to earlier, then the people of the North need to be able to make that choice themselves through democratic means. For this reason, I will be writing to all council leaders, cross-party, to begin the process of calling for adequate, meaningful and real devolution to the North. We will communicate with the leaders of all three main political parties over our desire for adequate, meaningful and real localism. After all, Yorkshire and Humber has a population equivalent to Scotland and an economy double that of Wales, but the powers of neither. The time has come to say enough is enough and release the stranglehold of Whitehall. This will allow us in the north to have the tools to deliver the jobs and growth for the country. Many of the live issues in the national and international debates currently are about the dominance of cities and the need for them to be the focus of devolution from national governments. The rise of inequality as an issue troubling even the IMF. Nationalism and internationalism are issues I and my administration are engaged with and acting on at a local level. It is a privilege to lead and to serve this great city. As I hope I have set out today, there have been many achievements, and we will continue to invest for the future, plan for the future, and build for the future, in which we all have a stake. We have made great progress, but there is more, much more, I would like to do, and I look forward to speaking with you again following the local elections next year. Thank you.
Okay, I think if you'd like to stay there, it's all right to take questions.
I can move about now.
I've got Mike, I'm just looking for who's going to, is Debbie still around, or will you take the microphone around? Someone going to take the microphone around? Okay. What I didn't say before James started to speak was that there are cards on your table if you wanted to think about the question to answer it, but clearly you don't have to write anything down. Are there any first reflections, comments or questions for James about what you've just heard?
Well, I thought of one. Don't say live on a web stream that your mobile number's on the website because your phone starts ringing. So I'll find out who that is in a bit.
Okay. Would you mind just saying who you are? Yeah. Just who you're, where you're from, all that stuff, you know.
Simon Usher, the Managing Director of Persimmon Homes. Again, Councillor Alexander, I think it's great to hear your ambitions for the city, both personally and from a business perspective. It creates a great environment for us to be able to invest. I know building in this city has its difficulties in terms of objections, etc., from both the public and from certain political parties. But I think if everybody embraces the overarching benefits that new house building can bring to the city, not just bricks and mortar of housing, but infrastructure investment, dealing with housing needs, creating new communities, it really is a positive thing for the city. I think what I'd like to understand is what progress is being made in terms of the physical infrastructure improvements, in terms of the ring road situation. Whether you could give us an update on that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to take a couple?
Question, or I was going to say we can take a couple, but if people are still thinking, then maybe you could answer that and ask people.
Okay. I welcome that point. I should point out to people the growth, anti-growth argument that you see played out in the press daily is not party political. It looks like it, it's used for party political means, but that is not what it's about. It's about opposition and administrations in different areas. Some of my Conservative colleagues who I work very well with in other areas of the country are facing exactly the same challenges from their Labour opposition that we hear from Conservative and Liberal Democrats here in York. And it is about trying to play to some people that age-old problem over people who want homes and people who don't want homes being built near them. But what I find frustrating is the contrast in York is so stark that actually trying to maintain a status quo and trying to make it look like a status quo is actually not only affecting people who have that demand for housing now, it affects the children of the people in the very homes that those people are supposed to be trying to represent. And I think that's wrong. And I also find it difficult when some politicians in York, and I won't say which ones, live in homes that are built on green land, but then oppose homes built on green land next to them. And that for me says, I'm entitled to this right, but no one else is. And I don't think that's correct. We're not talking about huge swathes of land. If you want to take what we're proposing beyond what the previous administration was in land terms. We're talking, I think, about 2% of green land over the course of the plan as a difference. If you want to take into account reality, what you see out the window, and then what you see afterwards, it'd be 5%. Now, if that's the cost of being able to sort out a lot of our housing situation so that young people in the city can remain here and not be priced out, I think that's a price worth paying.
James, do you want to just pick the question up about infrastructure?
Oh, sorry, yes.
That's the second half of the question, wasn't it, about the ring road and what needs to service development?
Well, you've seen the new Park and Rides clearly opening this week, and that's one of the biggest transport investments we've had in the city. It was £7 million invested from our economic infrastructure fund that we set up after the election, and the rest was committed to from government. It was frustrating that the money was awarded from government before the election and then withdrawn, then we had to rebid, and then it was seen as less attractive. And, you know, we all know those games that are played, but, you know, it is a joint effort, and we have managed to deliver that, and it was a manifesto pledge. But that creates road capacity of a few percent, basically, in terms of getting people off the roads. But that ends from the cars, but that ends up being, you know, increased with a growing economy and more people in cars as well. And the big thing that businesses are saying to me is we need the ring road dualled. Now, the difficulty is understanding the finances around that, because our annual budget, if you don't count all the education stuff, is £128 million for the council, and to actually dual the ring road, it's £350 million. So it's not like we're going to stop doing everything for, you know, 3 years or whatever to try and fund it. But we can get funding together from different packages. We're looking at getting funding from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority through the devolution opportunity the government is giving. We believe we can also get some funding from North Yorkshire, not significant, but still money that would be welcome nonetheless, because it's important to North Yorkshire's economy. No doubt at some point I think we should be contributing some money, and no doubt through the developments that are proposed within the local plan, there will be developer contributions to that also. But if you had all those ducks in a row, I think that you'd get to around £90 million-ish, which doesn't, you know, get to the 350 where you want to be. So without some form of government intervention or some long-term investment plan for city infrastructure, you can't quite get there. But it doesn't mean you can't start the process. And clearly what you would do is you would start with large roundabouts to alleviate congestion at certain sections, and you would dual the northwest section initially. And no doubt certain problems would then be able to push it out to other areas, and in which case you would start a progressive system of when funding opportunities came up to be able to get there. But I don't support what some people have suggested, that just set it up as a toll road, and that was from a business leader. I think that would be a mistake. But we do have to explore those opportunities, and to be fair, I think there is cross-party agreement towards trying to achieve that. It should have been dualled in the first place, it would make things a lot easier.
Okay. Any other questions? I noticed our colleagues, media partners from the press arrived. Did you want to ask a question? I think you may have indicated you did want to ask a question previously.
Not now, what we can follow up.
Okay, so you want to ask a question while you've got the opportunity in public? No. No.
Not immediately.
Okay, that's okay. Okay. Question over here.
Peter Morris from Barratt Homes, also house builder. My question is not housing related. I don't know whether it's a question or statement, but I'll say it anyway. Tour de France is coming to York. How good is that?
It's very good, but I have to admit, and this is going to sound slightly derogatory, doesn't mean to be, but you may have noticed I'm on a charity weight loss challenge, and at the Tour de France I promised myself I could have my first pint in 6 months, and I think I'm looking forward to the pint more than the Tour de France, but that may just because of the stress with how difficult it is to put on such a large event like that. But the staff are working flat out on this, they really are, and it's going to be fantastic, it really is. I don't think anyone realises exactly how big this is, not only for York and Yorkshire, but for the country. You know, I had no idea when we started out, you know, putting money towards the bid and people said you'd never get it and so on, that half the world's population watched the Tour de France. I've never really watched it before, so it came as a bit of a shock to me. But you know, just in advertising terms, what that means is that people will see York in all its glory, and we want them to come here, learn about here, and invest here. And it is a huge, huge opportunity for us. But we don't know 100% how many people will be here, so it'll be interesting seeing how people actually get around the city on the day. But I'm sure everyone will be enjoying themselves regardless.
I don't really do it, if you mind me asking Chris wants to add anything, because she's clearly leading on this delivery here. You are a bit more enthused about the bike than this girl.
Yes, a little bit more enthused, and I won't be having a pint on the day.
I think I'll be too busy to have a pint on the day. But it's very, very big for us. It's just an absolutely wonderful opportunity for not only the city to shine and the businesses to shine and all become involved, but it's a wonderful opportunity for all of our residents also to get involved in something that maybe some of them have watched on TV if they're not like James, and always thought, wow, would love to go to that, would love to go to Paris to see that. Well, actually, they don't have to move out of their own city to see the start of one of the legs of it. And it's just, I never dreamed we would ever have the Tour de France in York, as I guess most people wouldn't. But it's taken an awful lot of hard work. I think about 4 times more the work that we imagined it would take, but it's going to be absolutely worth it on the day, and the excitement is building now because we're coming up to the last few weeks. So just get all your tickets for everything that you need to get tickets for, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime event for York, I think.
Yes, I think we ought to mention, what's the event on the Wednesday night is
We have a soiree in the grey rooms, and I've been talking to a few colleagues about that, so that's going to be an excellent event.
Sally, do you want to use the microphone?
So we've got a soiree on the Wednesday, the 2nd of July, in the De Grey Rooms, which will be a lovely French occasion, a very special dinner. And then we've also got the Grande Party on the Friday, concert at Huntingdon Stadium. A few tickets still left, so if I can interest anyone in that, please come and talk to me.
It's going to be like last night the Proms, Hope and Gloria, Russell Watson and Alton Images and Alistair Griffin and Disco Mister, who, if you haven't got yet, have the only World Cup single in the top 100. And they happen to be teachers at Huntingdon School. And they made the cheapest ever music video in Root, which you can all download and watch. And it knocks all the rest into the top 10 of this year's releases. Yeah. It has to be said that it's given York huge profile, because we're leading on delivery of day 2, but we're also leading the whole region on delivery of a cycling legacy, and York is the heart of cycling in Yorkshire. More people cycle here more often than anywhere else, and the objective is to make Yorkshire the heart of European cycling, which we intend to do. So it is huge. Thank you for asking me.
Can I ask though, I mean, we've got here business people, community people, so sorry, you've got a question. I'll come afterwards.
Sorry, James, is that okay? I'm Kate Locke. I chair the York Environment Forum. I have another hat as well. I've left my trombone downstairs in the ante-room. So I also run Brasston York. We're putting on a brass band festival this weekend as part of the official Yorkshire Festival. So we're celebrating that as well. So just a little plug for that. There's some leaflets downstairs. But James, I'd like to ask you a question in my capacity as chair of the Environment Forum. York has a key ambition, which is enshrined in the strategy for York, to be a leading environmentally friendly city. Yeah. 2 things really. First of all, I didn't hear any mention specifically of the environment in your speech. And secondly, a lot was said about growth. Again, I didn't hear the word sustainable growth. So I'd like to ask you about that.
Well, I think the only growth that's worth pursuing is sustainable. I think it should be, as read. It doesn't make sense to pursue short-term gain when you know there's going to be problems around the corner, and that's why we've always tried to take long-term decisions. Some popular, some aren't. But they're the decisions that are required for the city regardless. With regards to sustainability, environmental agenda and so on, I've had discussions with colleagues and I don't think we've done enough on this agenda. And one of the things that I am most keen on is with regards to energy. I think that we can find innovative ways to be able to bulk buy energy, and I can't go into too much detail, but supplant those costs through certain mechanisms to be able to provide cheaper energy that's environmentally friendly for residents. I think not only does that help with the environmental agenda and carbon emissions, but it also helps with the cost of living crisis that many residents are facing. And if they've got less expenditure on energy and they've got more money in their pocket, not only is their purchasing power increased and they have more opportunities, but it means they'll spend their money more locally as well. So you actually get economic growth. And trying to knead that together is tricky, but I think we can do it. I haven't found a reason why we can't pursue the idea I have around bulk buying energy and supplanting it using carbon credit funding. Someone may, after this, explain to me why it can't be done. But if an energy company gets its money at source, then in which case I can't see how it's state aid to use carbon credit funding through an intermediary to be able to supplant the energy costs. And then you have to turn the energy market on its head to ensure that the least amount of electricity used means the cheaper per unit it is. Because in which case then there's an incentive to use less electricity, whereas at the moment it's perverse that that's not the case. It's a standard economic model which then doesn't support trying to have sustainable energy sources for the future.
It's Janet Barnes, Chief Exec of York Museums Trust. I'm just thinking about tourism and its part it plays in the economic development of the city. And I just wondered what your view would be about the sort of percentage, if you're thinking about the economic development of the city, how much percentage-wise would tourism be in your thinking? Because it's moved up the agenda, hasn't it, over the last sort of 10 years or so. I just wondered a ballpark sort of sense of it.
It is incredibly important. I mean, as you're aware, when I became council leader, I thought it was important that I became a director of Visit York for that very reason. It's integral to some of the economic growth that we are fostering and encouraging. And we've been looking at figures in terms of the expenditure of visitors when they come here. Where I try and find some balance is that a lot of the jobs that are provided through the tourism sector are still low-waged. And there's some good reasons for that. Some of those businesses are not viable if you go straight to a living wage model, which is why I was speaking to Alan Milburn recently about can we find other ways of other things added into the terms and conditions of people's employment. So if they can't get a living wage, can they get something that overall gives them a financial envelope which does help, whether that's training, time off for family or whatever. But where I think we need to focus more on, and I'm very pleased that a scrutiny committee is looking at this, is trying to attract those more higher value jobs so that people with the higher skill set in some of the tourism jobs that don't adequately need those skills, people can move out of those, go into the higher jobs and still spend their money in York and so on. But then you free up that job for someone who's currently unemployed or someone that wants to take on board more hours. Because as much as I'm pleased that we have 40% less kids in workless households than when the administration started, and that our economy's back to 4.3 billion, and our unemployment rate is now 1.3 billion, the actual income of families is down. We still have increasing levels of child poverty because of people working part-time where they were working full-time before. They are on zero-hour contracts. And all of these issues have to be looked at in the guise of that economic growth model. We can't just say, we want an extra amount of low-paid jobs, because actually all that does is increase the benefit bill for the nation and still increase poverty in the city, and that's tricky. But also, as you'll be aware, we have issues with the productivity levels, not only in tourism, but in general. And I know the Bank of England, I think the other day, said they were concerned about the productivity levels in the UK. But Yorkshire and Humber, I think, has a productivity gap of something like 10%, and compared to the rest of the country, and has done so for the last 10 years. I think it's shifted 0.1%. And we need to start trying to shift tourism-related jobs in this country to, rather than being jobs that people do because they can't do anything else, to jobs that are actually a trade. I mean, we're twinned with Dijon, and in Dijon, they don't have those kind of problems. People go to college to learn how to become waiters and waitresses, and they learn proper hospitality skills, and that increases that productivity. It means people also spend more because they're getting quality of service, and it's something that's going to be so important to the future of this city. So I know that York College is doing some fantastic work on this issue, and they're looking at other ways of being able to try and address this gap. But we have to do that in partnership with businesses. And I've spoken to a few hoteliers, because I would quite like to see in this city, a hospitality school related to one of the larger hotel chains. If they have one in Oldham, I can't see why we can't have one in York. But that's easier said than done. But I think that it is an area where we can address some of those levels of wages, give people proper recognition of the skill set that they have, while still trying to drive the entire economy up. So in which case, people can afford then to pay their staff more. You've got less turnover of staff, less recruitment costs, and people have some dignity in their jobs. I should say, Matt yesterday at a public meeting said one of our councillors was talking rubbish. The problem was I actually agreed with him.
He was talking rubbish, I stand by that statement. Matt Freckleton, Executive Director of the York Television Channel, launching next year. James, thinking back to our community conversation event last night, when we were discussing the nighttime economy and the issues and problems that come with that, with drinking, but sort of separated but related, where does the city think our nighttime economy is going? Are we just going to see an ever-increasing number of hen and stag doos coming down from Newcastle, or are we going to see it moving in a different direction?
Well, some of them are homegrown hen and stag doos as well. It's not just Newcastle, but for those of you not aware, we've been having these community conversations. We're having one in every ward in the city. I'm at all of them, and there's at least one other cabinet member with me and the ward councillors. We can answer any questions, and they came out of two things. One was in our peer review, people said that they want to engage more with the council, they want to know more. I'm not sure whether community conversations is necessarily the best model, but it is a form to give everyone equally an opportunity to engage and ask questions. And secondly, there was a resident in Dringhouses who I spoke to, and he said, "Why are you buying the Lord Mayor a new car? Bloody waste of money, you shouldn't be doing that." And I explained to him that it was cheaper than the old model, that it was actually a display model and something. He said, "Well, why don't you tell the media that?" And I said, "Well, I do, but that's not the story, is it?" And he said, "Well, why can't you have meetings to explain these things?" So it ends up becoming somewhat a mythbuster meeting that allows you to actually answer some of those points. And interestingly, in many of those community conversations, the same questions do come up, especially, how can you afford things on capital spending and yet not on revenue? But in terms of the last night's, people in Guildhall were very concerned about antisocial behaviour and the growth of it in the city centre, and I agree with them. Sometimes when you come to town at 4 p.m, it's not the kind of family-friendly place that you would expect from a few years ago, or even from a city like York in general. Now, sometimes that could be because of specific events on in the city that attract more people, and a lot of hotels and a lot of bars and restaurants rely on that kind of income that then employs York residents. So it's how do we get that balance? Some would like us to have, passport control at the bar walls, which I also explained last night. That's not physically possible, and I wouldn't quite say that was right. I'm not Nigel Farage, despite how much I want a pint. But there is an issue that needs addressing around that, and so it becomes about where we're attracting people from into the city and what they're doing, and how do you create an environment that is more family friendly. And the key to that has to be the 5 to 7 o'clock time, because that gap exists, and that gap is being filled at the moment by people who are drinking more. And also, I said last night, I've changed my mind a few times about minimal alcohol pricing. I've gone from being against it to for it to against it. It's the one issue that I seem to not be constant on, because there has to be a balance between people trying to run viable businesses and people who are running, reputable establishments, and those that are selling cheap drink, and then the taxpayer, either through A&E or police, have to then sort it out, and our staff then have to clean up the streets. I mean, I went out with the street cleaners at 4 in the morning, probably about 2 years ago now. I said I wanted to get stuck in, but I didn't realise I was going to be one man in a two-man team. If I hadn't cleaned along here and up by Blake Street, it wouldn't have got done. But it's a real eye-opener, especially when you haven't had a drink, seeing exactly what's happening at that time in the morning. And for some residents, that can be quite scary. And one of the things that I've discussed following the meeting yesterday with Councillor Simpson-Lang, my deputy, who has portfolio responsibility for this area, is how do we actually get tougher with licensing establishments? There are existing laws there to be able to say if people are selling cheap drink to people who are intoxicated, and that is creating problems. And there was the suggestion last night from someone about, can we ask A&E to tell us, where was the last bar that you drank in? If it's the same 2 or 3 bars coming up time and time again, then let's speak to the police and call in their licence for review. Let's actually, get tough with some of these people, because there has to be personal responsibility from the individual. There has to be responsibility from the people who are the approved premise, licence holders in those bars. But it is something that is difficult. It's not easy, and it's not going to be quick, because successful cities are where people want to be and they want to go out at night. And we are a successful city. There are businesses that rely on it. I think I saw some figures about so many hundreds of jobs that rely on that economy. But it can't be right in a city where you've got people competing for 50 pence a drink. I mean, that is ludicrous. And I do think there should be extra powers, through devolution or whatever, to councils or sub-regional areas to say that that's not right, and that we're not going to accept that, because that is just creating problems, and that is not what we want in this city. I was going to ask, obviously I've talked about, infrastructure and answers to some of those questions, but we have business people, community leaders, all sorts. What is the key thing that you think is a priority in York for the coming year? Because we can say what we think it is, but that's not always the same as what the public and what you guys think. And so I'm just interested in your views. Well, that's probably the same idea as me. I was hoping for something else, but we've been trying since 1956, so hopefully we'll do it this time. I have joked a few times that was 4 years before my mother was born, but we'll get there. And I've also joked that Dave was around at that time, but that's probably unfair.
Okay, any final questions?
Sorry,
Yeah, go on, Matt, you're allowed, and then we'll allow you if you want to say.
James, thinking back to Hiscox and the work that was done in that,
Yeah.
where do you see the work that was done in that leading to bringing other companies like that to York, and potentially maybe looking further afield to foreign investment in the city? Obviously, places like London do attract a lot of foreign investment just because of where they are. Can we attract some of that investment here in York, and what kind of investment might that look like?
I think we can. There's a few ways of doing this. One is, I'm not sure whether you saw a recent, I think it was Centre for Cities report, that said that York was one of the most, which surprised me, interdependent places outside London on London. It was saying a fifth of all jobs are from London-based companies in York, and therefore as London grows, we will grow as well, and that's probably because of East Coast mainline connectivity. So there are opportunities around moving some of those businesses or larger consolidations of what they do outside of London, sometimes because of wage levels to York, or because of the higher skill set and quality of life. But also, there is interest from international investors, because the MIPIM conference, which York has attended now the last 2 years, and I know it's controversial going, and every year people say, you shouldn't go, but that's the place where all the deals are done, and that's the place where you can crack in with investment. And we had significant interest from American people who said that London was overheating, and so they were looking for where else they can invest in. And they were looking at areas such as Manchester, Leeds and York. Now, York hasn't got an economy the size of Leeds and Manchester, it never will. But because of our speed of economic growth and because of the high skill set and a lot of those attractions, people see that they can put a smaller amount of money as a safe bet into York and get a greater return very quickly. Now, that opportunity will not last forever. The window for that is now. Because otherwise, as the economy picks up nationally, other cities and other places will come into play. And so we are trying to close some of those deals, and that will be linked obviously to some of the housing settlements and so on, and trying to get long-term revenue streams back from them. But I said in my speech that we are planning in the next few months to hold a digital-related conference based on the Gigabit City. And clearly we want to work with partners, and I'm sure yourself and Mark will be a part of it, and no doubt we'll be strong-arming you to be involved. But I believe that if we're going to have the fastest internet connections in the country, and we're going to be the first to do so, ultra-fast, we have that high skill set, you have the innovation from the university, and you have a desire to retain those graduates with those high skill sets, then this could be an opportunity to get some of those higher value jobs that I was saying about. And I would love to see another kind of Hiscox, a 350 jobs kind of company to relocate to York. I'd be happy with one of them. If I get 2 or 3, I'd be even happier. But I think that that will also further dent that job seekers allowance rate. I mean, I said it was 1.3%. It's only 1,900 people, give or take a few figures. That's tiny, really, in a city that's 200,000. But we do need to be able to make sure that we have people using their skills for the right jobs, and that is not currently what we're doing. I mean, a few people have said to me, well, what kind of jobs has York attracted over the last few years that are seen as too low value and you would have turned away? And this is where I find it difficult, because I wouldn't have turned any of them away because they're still jobs. But at the same time, it's the higher value jobs we need to focus on now. And a place like York, you can be slightly more selective than some other places, especially with the advantageous economic situation that we're in.
Okay, I think that's brought things naturally to conclusion. Thank you, James Alexander. And please do stay and have another cup of tea or coffee or a glass of fizzy water. And I know James is going to stay around for a bit just to circulate and chat to you individually. And if the colleague from the press wants to talk to James after, then that's possible now. Okay.
There's no wine, it's all cutbacks. So apologies for that. You can have a breadstick and some water, but that's about it. But thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate it, and we do want to work in partnership with all of you over the coming year and beyond. Thank you.